As I read this gospel text prayerfully in preparation for this meditation, the phrase that stood out to me was, "And at that moment the cock crowed," referring to Jesus' prediction after Peter's 3 denials. And I was out on a run recently thinking about this phrase and wondering why it stuck out to me. And the moment I tuned into these very thoughts, mid-stride, a damn rooster jumped out of the bushes in the road right next to me and crowed, nearly tripped me on the pavement. Strange and true story, strange coincidence. Richard Rohr describes the Holy Spirit as a force field all around us. When you're inside the force field, things flow. The only way that you can be inside the field is to walk in openness and love. If you are hateful, resentful, judgmental, not present, you step out of the field and bump into things that cause you harm. And when you step back into love, even in the face of darkness, all kinds of unexpected things happen. Coincidences, providences, being at the right place at the right time. We've all had such experiences where we see or at least wonder if someone else is in charge. If we can only love, only trust, even when things don't make sense. But only in retrospect can we make meaning. Only in looking backwards can the dots be connected. But not now, not yet. In John's version of the gospel, Jesus sees and knows from a sky-high vantage point. Peter says he'd go anywhere with his Lord. And though Jesus stays in the force field, walking towards his fate, Peter cannot accept this path. Overwhelmed and disoriented by his own fear and self-protection, Jesus' prediction of denial is fulfilled, where even the rooster cooperates with this narrative. My encounter with the rooster reminded me of another run I had a week or so earlier. As I jogged down the main road of the city where I live, a series of rescue vehicles went by me. There were police cars and a fire truck and an ambulance, all with their sirens on. And I ran ahead and ended up turning down the road where the vehicles were going. And I came to a metro train stop on the edge of town. And at this complicated intersection, there was much commotion. The rescue vehicles were all around, and onlookers were standing at each corner, and the Metro Gold Line train was stopped in the middle of the tracks. And I asked a woman standing by what was going on. And she pointed over towards the tracks to the shape of a human body on the pavement, with a white sheet laid over him. A homeless man, confused in a moment's time, accidentally walked out into the tracks and had his life snuffed out by the oncoming train in the blink of an eye. Life is cruel at times. A man without a home just got caught in the wrong place at the wrong time, and there he lay. It's dark and sad, and it just doesn't make any sense. He was dead on the tracks. And I stood at a distance listening to a woman who was gently weeping and talking to me after witnessing this tragedy. And when I was observing this clamoring scene, for some reason, what registered to me most was that no one was standing or sitting by the body. The man's body was alone and isolated, as if he was a tragic afterthought of what had just happened. In Jewish tradition, when someone dies, the eyes are closed and the body is covered and laid on the floor, and candles are lit next to it. The body is never left alone as a sign of respect. Physical death is not seen as something to be abhorred or devalued, but it is seen as a part of life and a part of God's plan for humanity. The extensive mourning rituals in Judaism are not a protest against death, but rather a demonstration of the great value that is placed on life. So for someone to be sitting beside this man's body would be the most light-filled and life-affirming thing to do. But that's hard. That's really hard, to sit in the face of death. I confess that today I recognize a strong urge in me to speak a Friday's here, but Sunday's coming message. Death is here now. But hang in there, resurrection is on its way. This is an easy message to speak, but much different as it lives out in the cycle of life. And I affirm and celebrate this holy cycle, but that's not where we are right now. We're standing in our time with a stark image of a man laying on the tracks, and it's disorienting and confusing. Liturgically, we are in the moment of tragedy, walking step by step in this narrative towards Jesus dying, towards his bloody body hanging on a Roman torture device, and the disciples abandoning the scene. It's hard to be present and hold vigil with someone dying of cancer. It takes a lot of courage to face the reality of gang violence and of the countless young lives lost every day. It's painful to encounter someone being executed through capital punishment when all appeals are exhausted. This is our real world right now. And Jesus' crucifixion validates all the suffering in our life that is confusing and just doesn't make any sense in the present moment. How do we live as a presence of hope in the face of death of any kind, whether physical death, suffering, injustice, or pain that we experience? When I was in seminary, I went through a program called CPE, which is Clinical Pastoral Education. And I was a chaplain in a hospital and also in a Jewish senior home in Rockville, Maryland, where frankly, we encountered daily all kinds of death and suffering. And I had a wonderful rabbi supervisor, and when my colleagues and I gathered together to debrief our experiences from the hospital rooms, Rabbi Michaels had a few particular phrases that he used over and over again. He would say to us, "Let them teach you about their pain. Did you let them teach you today?" He wisely implied that letting another teach you about their pain is sometimes the most healing balm for another. Just listening, being present, holding space, even when our instinct is to retreat in the other direction. Because our tendency is usually to fix, to make things better by hasty words about resurrection, or our own uneasiness in our own skin when we sit with suffering. And being there, being here today, fully present, gives rise to the creative possibility which we cannot yet see. Brian McLaren, in his book, Naked Spirituality, writes that we can do what Job does and what the Bible as a whole does. We live with the tension, feel its pain. Let the discomfort churn within us. We abandon hope of an easy explanation that will let us happily and will accept reality as it is. And something happens when we make this move. When we refuse all easier alternatives, we find our hearts are strangely empowered. We grow resolute, determined to throw our lives into the cause of justice, comfort and compassion and healing, aiming our resistance, nonviolent resistance at all that is hateful, unjust, false, and foolish. And whenever the pain proves unbearable, in the manner of the psalmist, we shout to God in prayer of anguish, lament, and sometimes even rage. This is the real deal. This is the stuff of life. The full range of emotion in the human experience. And God holds it all and lets it be the burning crucible for our own transformation into love itself. Richard Rohr says that authority does not come from titles or education, good things that they are. They are not what allows one to teach or to live in a way that changes lives. Authority comes from having suffered and recovered. All different kinds of wounds in us that cannot be denied, and we dare not walk through them. You got to know what it's like to be on the bottom and empty. Hate yourself, fear yourself, or doubt yourself, and then reread reality from that humiliated place. You have to know how much it hurts to hurt. You have to feel how much suffering it is to have suffered, to wake up and not want to wake up, to doubt all your beliefs, to know that you don't understand any of this. We, like Peter, resist this path fiercely. And we're always a beginner. There's no other kind of person. We walk around this mystery humbly, prayerfully, quietly, returning to wisdom and contemplation. It is comforting today to know that we are in the force field of love that is expansive enough to include even the sounds of nature itself. Our suffering is contained inside the very womb of God, where new birth is always possible. But it's hard to be where we are today, and that's okay to say that. It's difficult to sit in this crucifixion. We can wail, be silent, rage, kneel, or lament. We can only hold our authentic selves before God and one another. And our work is to stay here in this moment, to hang in and let love do its creative work in us and through us.